like it's been so long
Yeah.
since we've podcasted or like done this.
Yes. And since we're already so new, it's definitely like, what do I do with my hands type thing.
Truly. Okay, but yeah, we're back from Greece. It was the best trip. The best trip. In this episode, we want to talk about our time in Greece, share a little bit more about Fertilysis, what we learned there, and kind of just some next steps of where we're going moving forward from here while we're trying to get to our babies.
Sounds good.
So we went to Greece for what, like 10 days, 9 days, something like that?
Something like that, around 10, I think.
And the whole first part of our trip, we were in Athens with the company Fertilysis. So if this is the first episode you've listened to and you're like, who's Fertilysis? What is this? We do have some episodes like talking about Fertilysis. But basically, they are a company based out of Greece that reached out to me on Instagram the end of last year. And they are microbiologists. Molecular biologists. I always say micro.
That's because they do a test, which we'll get into, about the microbiome. So it's
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Molecular biologists. And they do tests for your microbiome, making sure that it's nice and healthy and a great place to host a baby. And then also reproductive immunology. They do sperm DNA fragmentation and all of that. So really diving into some things that a lot of doctors over here just aren't trained to do. And back in December, we found out that I had 2 infections and a virus in my uterus. I had low lactobacillus, I think. When we were there, they like corrected me.
There's lactobacillus, lactobacilli, but
yeah,
you're on the right track.
Which that's like good bacteria you want in your vaginal tract and cervix and uterus to help ward away infections, because it's a very your uterus is the only open organ in your body, which is so wild to think about. Mm-hmm. And it's just open. So like two times a month. So ovulation and then when your period is happening. So you want that good bacteria to ward away any bad bacteria that can get in there, cause infections, all of that. Also, I've been listening to a lot of podcasts recently because they brought it up there about endometriosis and how the way endometriosis works, you're just more inclined to have infections happen in your uterus because you do have lower good bacteria. Okay. So anyways, basically we did a bunch of treatment this year with antibiotics and stuff. And because we just couldn't get that good bacteria to grow back, my uterus just continued to get more and more infections. And we were kind of at a place where it was like, what do we do next? That's when Fertilysis stepped in. We're like, we'd love to host you guys and have y'all come. We can do some more testing here. We can do treatment here and go from there. And I got this question a lot, so I want to address it really quick right off the bat. But our original plan when I talked with Olympia from Fertilysis was to actually have other couples come with us and go there. But as it was such a quick turnaround, because we talked about this Memorial Weekend. I remember we were headed out to Lake and it was Memorial Weekend. And that was the first time it got brought up. And then we started getting the ball rolling, and that was kind of slow to go because it's a huge project to take on for them to be able to plan everything and all of that. And obviously they treat everyone so personal, as you do with infertility. So, we had couples that were interested, but, you also want to make sure you're on certain parts of your cycle, getting certain treatment. You can't be on your period for what I got done, the antibiotic washes. So it just didn't work out that way. But we will share at the end here, if you are interested in actually going there, we'll share more details on that. So it was just Stephen and I that went, and it was so cool meeting them in person.
Yeah, they were great. I just want a little comment. I knew that trip was doomed, I think, from the start, because Adelaide handles all these things, but I was like, they would turn around for people to plan a trip to Greece and do all that stuff. Right. I was like, this is just too quick of a timeline. But I will say, right off the bat, what they implemented that I thought was so cool from the get-go is you don't have to go through them in terms of booking your hotel and transportation, but they do have a really cool option that lets you. So right when we got there, it was all of our transportation was taken care of from the airport to the hotel, from the hotel to the facility. I felt like a celebrity or something.
I was like, wow, this must be how the celebrities or the rich live. You never have to think about anything.
No, they're just there.
They call up to your room and be like, hey, your ride's here. And I was like, Oh, okay. And like everywhere we go, like we didn't need to know directions or anything. Like we just had people picking us up. And it's part of the package that we'll talk about at the end too. But for the record, this episode isn't to convince you to go to Greece. This episode really is to just share what we've learned and just our experience. And then, obviously if you want to, there's an opportunity to. But
yeah, I think talking more about like the why, and then, I'm sure there's other people that do things. So just give me that info and then you can do with it what you will.
Yeah.
You can obviously do testing from afar. So it's like not a mandatory requirement.
Yeah. So the plan was to go there for a few days and then get the antibiotic washes done and then do our reproductive immunology. So I actually have the vials for the reproductive immunology that they sent me to do here. Like, I think they sent it to me like in January, but honestly, we just had the second surgery. There was a lot going on. I was overwhelmed and I was scared because I didn't know if they found anything with reproductive immunology that you could do anything about it. I was like, is this just going to be like the door shutting? Like, oh, nope, y'all aren't matches, can't get pregnant. There you go. So, and Dr. V with Fertilysis did say, like, you were able to get pregnant before, so I don't think you're going to have issues here, but like with reproductive immunology. But the thing is, there is treatment with reproductive immunology. If you do find anything with your microbiome, you can do treatment from afar. You don't have to go to Greece. And that's what we tried to do at the beginning. So anyways, felt like royalty when we were there. It was just like so nice being like picked up and everything was taken care of. And I have a highlight of like our day-to-day and everything. Like I did a Q&A with Dr. V and Olympia with Fertilysis that you can go look on my Instagram, which is Adelaide_A_White. It will like walk you through the whole trip. But I didn't really know what to expect when going. I think there was like a little piece in the back of my head being like, is this real? Is this
There was a larger piece in the back of my head. Because I wasn't talking to them day to day, right? I'm just in the background. You're doing all the communication and, I might have checked out their site or whatever, but it's like, okay, what are we talking about here?
And another crazy thing is like, they're not even on Google Maps. Just because it's like so different there.
Well, and because it's a startup, right?
Yeah.
It's not like they've been, they're not a 3,000 or 300 person company, right? You know, so.
Yeah, so I was like, well, what are we getting ourselves into? And I remember like right before we left, I was like, so what happens if we get taken? And Stephen's like, we're not going down that road. Like, that's not happening. But
that wasn't in the back of my head. It was different. Just wondering what the facility would be like and all that.
Yeah.
She went to the straight, which all girls do. It's like murder mysteries going in your head all the time.
Just listening to too much Dateline. Criminal podcast. But we get there and we're running off of very little sleep from a travel day that was just so many delays, like 24 hours of travel. And it was like surreal walking in there and meeting Olympia, because I've been talking to Olympia since the beginning. And just like being able to meet her in person and like put a name to the face and like a personality to the face and everything. And like, obviously we come from two different cultures, two different like main languages. So it was like so nice to be able to be there and like see them in person, because you just it's so different when you're texting. It's so different when you're on a call, right? So like being able to be there and just, immediately when we walked in, it just felt like family. I don't know how to describe it. Like you felt so taken care of. You felt so cared for. Like they really just wanted to help. They wanted what was best.
Well, yeah. And it's pretty incredible because Dr. V is the one doing everything. They have like, I don't know what you call them, lab assistants, basically that can help with drawing blood or like doing some of the tests with the blood work. However, like anything to do with going over results or just like evaluating and like trying to figure out, okay, what's the right path forward, he's handling. So it's like, it's a double-edged sword because, right, if it's just him, so like, he has to go through it all, but it is super nice to have someone where it's like, you're not getting passed off to the assssistant or a junior. It's like, and it's not just because like we were working with them, it's like anyone, like he just handles all of it.
He does it all.
So that was the first thing I enjoyed.
Yeah, and the cool thing too is I'm someone who I'm like, okay, we're on the journey of trying to conceive. Obviously, like we will try anything that we feel comfortable in our realm to help us get to our babies. So like I will try it all. And I feel like I have in these last 3.5 years. People are like, you should try this. You should try that. I'm like, yeah, I've done that. Yeah, I've done that. Yeah, I've done that. So like whenever Fertilysis first reached out to me, I was skeptical because I was like, y'all are in Greece. Like, who are you? Like, I don't know what a microbiome is. Like, what does this mean? Like, my doctor hasn't been talking about this, you know? And then after just like learning more and educating yourself, and I think that's so important in whatever you are doing in life when it comes to medical treatment and on your fertility journey, whether it's like a doctor you're seeking out, going through IUI, IVF, like surgeries, whatever it may be. It is so important to do your own research and to learn for yourself, because I feel like a lot of people these days, and I'm one of them, I'm 100% guilty of this. I'll just take for what people say, like for granted. And I'm like, okay, cool. They said this, so that's what that means. And Stephen is like, I need the facts. I need the science. I need the studies.
Especially before making decisions, right? I mean, you are more willing to be like, oh, okay, I can try this. And, you know, if there's a low cost to it,
right.
I don't just mean like financial costs. I mean, like if there's a low implementation cost, whether that's like changing your diet or something, I might be more willing to do it without diving super deep. But for other things, yeah, I like to be like, okay, someone told me this, you know, even if I trust them, you know, or if I don't, it's like, let's go verify it. Let's go, you know, when you go to a doctor for like my knee or something, I went and I talked to 3 people. It's not like I didn't trust the first guy. It's just like, I like to get second opinions and
absolutely.
all that stuff.
And it's really important. So being there, like first off, like we've done the research ourselves on like microbiome, reproductive immunology, and like saw the worth in it and how it could help us. But being there and hearing from Dr. V, who is so knowledgeable, like he got his PhD
Correct.
in the UK.
Yeah, he went to Essex, and I can't remember the two, but he went over to the UK for all of his schooling there. I can't remember which ones.
Yeah, and also like he has his own story with him and his wife, who, you know, they've struggled to conceive, and they have 3 kids now, one of which she just had at like 42 when they told her that she had a low AMH and like will not be able to have another child. Had a baby at 42. And a lot of that had to do with reproductive immunology and what they learned from that. So I always feel I love doctors just a little bit more when like they have, first off, so much care for their patients. And I know Dr. V, well, I guess he is a doctor, but like I know he's not like what we think for like, he's not a reproductive endocrinologist or a napro doctor.
Like a gynecologist.
But yeah, or like a gynecologist, right? But they do partner with.
Yeah, I like that too. I mean, real quick as we're going through, it's, you know, you do a lot of your blood work there and, you know, they're doing all the diagnosing, but they partner with their local gynecologist lab. And that guy was also great. I mean,
yeah, he was great. And, you know, he's done IVF and all that. So I guess he's a reproductive endocrinologist. So he was just so knowledgeable too, to learn from him. So basically the first day, it was just like so exciting getting to know them. You know, we ran through a lot of just like questions we had with Fertilysis and the microbiome and reproductive immunology. We did our blood work for reproductive immunology. And then
we sat down with him for a while.
Yeah.
And my favorite part is like, even, okay, when we're going to try and explain all the science behind it or give you more information, it's still going to come, like when you tried to do this for me at the beginning of all this before we went, like, you know, you would try and say, okay, this XYZ, but you're giving me basically a boiled down version because it's not like in your...
From him.
Yeah, it's not like, exactly, you're trying
source.
to do it. So direct from the source, having Dr. V talk about stuff, I was like, oh, this guy, it was like listening to like a Dr. Huberman podcast where it's like, oh, I know this guy knows what he's talking about. And like, I might not be able to communicate as well, but it gave me a lot of reassurance on that first
And again,
day.
I have a highlight where he literally is answering questions.
Yeah.
Dr. V is answering questions. So like, that's really great.
And his biggest problem is he wants to say even more. Like trying to get him to like tone it down because he just gets so excited, I think.
So on like Instagram stories, you can only record for a minute.
Yeah.
So before every single one, I was like, okay, you got to do this in a minute. You got to do this in a minute.
Yeah. And it's tough to pack in like all that.
It is, but he did a great job,
Yep.
him and Olympia. But so then we went over to, sat down with him for a long time to talk about it all. And I think that's when like you were just like, not sold, because I feel like you were sold before, but more so like bought in. Like you were like, oh, wow, this can help us. This can actually really be a big piece of our puzzle.
Yeah, you guard your heart, not only for this, but around a lot of like infertility stuff. And we've been told so many times, or we've gone through so many different stages of like surgery, XYZ, little things. I'm like, okay, this is it, this is it. So like you start to guard your heart more. And I do think that first day and hearing all of it, and then, you know, when we get to the last day, definitely like broke down some barriers for me.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, even for me too, I'm someone that doesn't do really well with like processing in the moment. But I look back on these last few months when we're like taking the breaks, doing the herbs, like whatever, like still hopeful and excited. I would not say excited, still like have hope in my heart. But like, I don't know, leaving there, the hope you and I both feel, it's almost like that guard that we had so strongly up and that wall we had built. It was just like, it was able to be chipped away. And I don't know, I feel like no matter what happens next, obviously I want to carry a baby so badly, but no matter what happens next, I feel so much purpose in it. And I truly do see God's hand through this whole journey. Just, I don't know, getting the messages that I got from so many of y'all sharing your stories with me, or how you've done testing through Fertilysis and like have your quote unquote happy ending, baby in your belly or in your arms, is just like, wow, you know, I don't know. I just felt so with Fertilysis and without Fertilysis, just from like me opening up and sharing my story on the internet. It was just like, okay, God, like I see you, you know, I see your purpose in this. And I feel like I've seen that for a while now, but it was, I don't even know how to describe it. It was just different when we were there.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think another cool thing they did, and I believe you shared this on your social media, but you know, they took out some holiday cards, or whether Christmas or whatever, and of just people being like, thank you, because they're now a big part of their life because they help them do it. And you know, they can't promise everything, right? They're very upfront. They're like, just like any gynecologist or someone who's helping you, like they're not going to promise you things, but they were super hopeful based on our results and the treatment and things, in which we can get into. So that was certainly refreshing. And then for me, it was, we got engaged in Greece. And so we just did this. So I'm like, okay, if we're able to conceive like pretty soon after, it's like, I'm probably moving to Greece. I don't know. Like get a second house there eventually.
Okay. Dreaming big.
Dream big. Because
second house in Greece, that's like the bougiest.
Not that bougie. I feel like property values there are lower than here. It'd probably be cheaper than trying to get a house. Well, if you try to get one in like Santorini, but like Syros,
Angelina Jolie, she has a house there. Her and Brad Pitt.
Yeah, I don't think we're going that way, but
we were like driving, and our driver's like, Angelina and Brad Pitt's house is right there. We were like, oh, okay, no big deal.
Yeah, cool.
Okay, so first day. Get there, talk with them, sit down. It was so great. We do our blood work for reproductive immunology. And then we went over to the guy, I think he's an RE over there. And he began my intrauterine antibiotic washes. I got 5 total done within 3 days. And we also did like an ultrasound to basically just look at everything. And then we did a hysteroscopy. So first changing and being over there and like sitting on that cold, I hate the doctor's office, like sitting on those cold beds. You're just like, oh my gosh. But anyways, sitting on there, we first did the ultrasound. And it was just like, I'm so used to getting ultrasounds, going to my doctor and just not getting good news, or just having like doom, like, okay, like, nope, this cycle's not it. You didn't ovulate. Like, you know, your uterine lining's not thick enough. You know, we're not seeing many follicles. We're not seeing an egg, like all these things, right? After these last like 3.5 years, but more importantly, like this last 2 years. And so to be in that room and just hear so much positive, like he was like, all right, here's your antral follicle count. Like, look how many follicles you have. I was in my luteal phase. So my 2-week wait at this time. And he was like, these aren't eggs you're ovulating this cycle, but like these are eggs that are coming up to ovulate. And I've been told I have a low AMH, and we think that, well, we don't know, right? Like, You don't know why my AMH was low, because ever since getting my laparoscopic surgeries, my AMH has increased. So my NAPRO doctor just thinks a possibility for this is because my eggs were just sitting in so much inflammation from endometriosis that they're just deteriorating and just not very many there. And then we also saw that with my ovaries. My ovaries were like all shrunk up before my laparoscopic surgeries from inflammation. And then after my surgeries, like it was so many eggs. I remember my first cycle back after my first cycle that we tried back after my first laparoscopic surgery. My doctor was like, are you like on the streets getting clomid? Like you have so many follicles. Like how are you doing this? And I was like, no, like I don't have any medication in my system. So anyways, so to be able to hear like, oh, you have like your intrafollicle count is really good. He's like, how old are you? And I was like, well, I'm about to be 30. And he's like,
30 now.
Yeah, I know. Now I'm 30. But he was like, this looks so good for your age. And I was like, well, I've been told I have a low AMH. He's like, no, I wouldn't worry about this. Like, this looks really good. So I'm like, okay, that's exciting to hear. And then just looking at my uterus cavity, like he was able to also see that I ovulated this past cycle, which that was exciting because something that, I've struggled with is LUFs. It doesn't happen, or LUFs, whatever. It doesn't happen every cycle, but it does happen some cycles. And it's like more prominent in endometriosis patients. Hi. So it was just super exciting to be like, oh my gosh, my body ovulated this cycle. That's exciting. Unfortunately, we weren't able to try because getting the intrauterine antibiotic wash is done.
Well, yeah, and it wouldn't help because basically that's going to kill off the non-ideal bacteria and allow the lactobacilli to grow. So
yeah. So anyways, that was just really exciting to hear. So he was like, everything looks great. And I was like, okay, wow. He was like, yeah, your endometrium lining looks really good. So I was like, oh, that's good to hear too. He's like, for where you are in your cycle, like if you were to be trying all the things. So it was like, okay, good. This is really exciting. So I feel like I was kind of on a high because I was so used to like bad news. Then I was like, all right, time to go do your hysteroscopy. And I was like, oh, I thought I was getting an HSG, which is not a hysteroscopy. I can't think of what it's called right now. But I was like, I thought I was getting an HSG and we were looking at my tubes. And he was like, no, we're not going through your tubes. He's like, this is a camera. We're going to stick all the way up. Yeah. And we're going to be able to look around and look at everything. But like, HSG is when they put like saline or liquid in your tubes and you're able to see if everything's moving around. So I was like, oh, like I didn't know that. So I was like kind of preparing myself for an HSG and what we were going to find, because in both of my laparoscopic surgeries, we did see that my first one, endometriosis, was blocking completely one of my tubes, partially blocking the other. The second one, it was partially blocking one of my tubes. They were able to excise it, get it out, have both my tubes like fully functioning again. So that was exciting. But this is something I've wondered because my last surgery was in December. So it's like, okay, it's been like 9 months since then. What does it look like? And he was like, yeah, we're not doing that. And I was like, okay. So then we walk in the room and Stephen couldn't come in for some reason.
They put me, okay, it's hilarious because they put me in a separate room that had a TV screen where I got to see the camera, which was a wild trip, just seeing like the down there part in a like microscopic way, whatever. But I'm looking at it and I have no clue what's going on. So I'm like, okay, why is this beneficial for me to just stare here and be like,
well, I think
what?
The room that I was in wasn't very big. So I wonder, and there was like 3 nurses in there and him, that I wonder if they were like, one more person here is just going to be.
I guess it's cool to see, but at the same time, without any commentary going on, I was just staring at a screen.
Oh, like, I know. I was wondering what was happening because they were like, he'll be able to see it. I'm like, are they going to be able to hear you? And mind you, Greek people talk fast, really fast. And when you're in a state of like, oh, this isn't comfortable. Oh my gosh, what's happening? And like, you're trying to listen to what he's saying. I so wish you were able to be in that room. Yeah. But anyways, they like first off, they showed me it. And I was like, oh, I wish you didn't show me that. Cause it was like this huge long thing. And I was like, that's going inside of me. I was like, is this going to hurt? They did give me a muscle relaxer, which is different than what you think of as a normal muscle relaxer. I guess there's 2 types, and this type is to help the muscles of your uterus. So like whatever kind of muscles those are.
So it's just like anatomically specific of where it targets as opposed to like.
Yeah. So it was like, this will help your uterus relax so you don't tense up. And that's something like I do tense up a lot. That's why I started going to PT and all that, pelvic floor therapy and all that. Anyways, so they put it up there. And like, at first I was like, okay, like just kind of feels like a tampon, like not that uncomfortable, whatever. He's like, all right, this is what we're looking at. We're looking at your vaginal canal. Okay, here's your cervix. And then like, that's when I was like I felt like I couldn't breathe. It wasn't quite the pain of like my uterine biopsy that I got done, or like an HSG or sonohystogram that I've gotten done. Like I feel like those were way more painful, but that's because I had blockage in my tubes. Well, why we think now, but anyways, but it was uncomfortable. Like it took my breath away, you know? And I have a very high pain tolerance that I was like, okay, this is not comfortable. And in my head, I'm like, is this normal? Is this not normal? What does this mean, right? Because in the past, when I've been uncomfortable during procedures, normally there's something not normal, right? So I guess he was talking me through it, but I think I blacked out. That I was just like, I didn't realize what he was saying. So, and in fact, the first feedback that I shared about it, like I wasn't even correct, because what I heard was different than what he was saying, because I was just like in this. That's why I wish you were there. Yeah. But I remember that night we went to dinner with Olympia, and she was like, so that's not exactly right.
Oh,
that
yeah,
you shared on Instagram. I was like, like I thought that's what I heard. Yeah. So basically my cervix, I'm in my luteal phase, right? My 2-week wait. My cervix is supposed to be shut, but it was so swollen that he thought that it's just swollen shut for a good majority of the time, including when I'm ovulating. And he's like, whether it's completely shut when you're ovulating or not, it's a hostile environment for sperm to swim through because of the inflammation. And, I've learned so much about inflammation, like these past few years, getting the endometriosis diagnosis and how much that impacts your fertility, that I was like, oh, well, like that's like, red light, like not good, red flag, whatever. And so he like had to push his way through. And because he was pushing through the inflammation and obviously like needing it to open up, since I was in my luteal phase, like it was just extremely uncomfortable. And he was like, the pain you're feeling is because of it's so swollen. Like I've done this on people in their luteal phase that it doesn't hurt like this, even pushing it open, but you're feeling the pain from the inflammation. So
much better explanation.
I know. I feel like now I was like, oh, okay. So getting it up in there. And then he was in my uterus and he was like, all right, let's look around. And it was just so wild to see. Like, I feel like I was in the magic school bus.
Yeah.
Like, I'm with Miss Frizzle.
You're seeing it in a new light. And I was looking at that like, this is weird. It did feel like that.
It is wild. Yeah. You're like seeing like little floaty things. You're like, what is going on? And so I thought he told me, look here, this is a sign of endometritis. But what he actually said is, look here, this is a sign that your body has fought endometritis, that like your body had endometritis. And so I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And then there was like a teeny tiny polyp that he saw. And he's like, this can be caused from infections as well. He's like, you see how it's like, it was kind of like a different coloring, like, it was kind of like this white red, but some parts were like really red. He's like, that's irritation. Like that's from infection. So then we went over to one of my ovaries and he was like, although we can't like go in your ovaries, we're going to look for bubbles. And if there are bubbles coming out, that means like, things are able to get through. Like the sperm is able to get through. Like that doesn't mean there's no blockage. But like there could be like partial blockage, but like if we see bubbles, we're good. So like he went over to one, bubbles immediately, saw them. He's like, okay, great. Then we go to the other one and it was like uncomfortable. Like I could feel it all the way on that side. And it's obviously like through my cervix too. And like that's swollen and uncomfortable and inflamed. So it goes on the other side and I felt like it was forever to see the bubbles. I mean, he was like moving around more. He's like, I'm going to have to get a little more aggressive. I was like, oh my gosh. And then finally we see bubbles. And I was like, oh, like remind me of Finding Nemo. Bubbles?
Yeah.
I was like, okay, good. Like this, he's like, this is great news. Like both they're open. They're both open.
Most likely, right? I mean, they can't confirm.
They are open. But there could still be partial blockage going on. Okay. But he was like, for what we're seeing, the fact that we're seeing, and like, I guess like the size of the bubbles mattered too. He was like, we're seeing a good amount of them and the size of them, all the things that he was like, sperm's able to get through. And like, this is good. This is good news. So, cause I kept being like, is this good? Is this good? And he was like, no, this is good. This is great news. So then he just like, okay, took it out. And then I was like, so what does this mean? He was like, so we're going to do the antibiotic washes. And that was next. And he's like, we're doing more than what you even need. So he's like, normally we'd have people come in and do 3. We're doing 5 for you. So we are going to kill everything here. So he said the polyp should basically, because it was just like so small that he was like, it looked like it was from infection or something. He's like, it looks like it will be able to basically just like fall off and you'll be able to get rid of it in your next period. From the antibiotic washes, he was like, we're going to be able to take care of like a lot of this inflammation and redness, your cervix. There was something that he talked about on my cervix that like, this is why I love sharing my journey on social media, because so many of y'all are able to like share with me and being like, oh, I had this and this is what that is. Or like, you should bring this up to your doctor. So recently, which I'll talk about in a little while, but I had a LEAP procedure done middle of last year after my first laparoscopic surgery, because they found the possibility of cancerous cells, and it did come back that there were precancerous cells, and it ended up doing a LEAP procedure, and that can result in scar tissue. Anything like that, like a LEAP procedure, surgeries, all these things can result in scar tissue that grow back that are not favorable while trying to conceive. And I guess there was something they did see on my cervix, and the LEAP procedure is done on your cervix, LEEP. It's done on your cervix, that there was like, I can't remember the wording that they used, but I had some people messaging me and being like, you should talk to your doctor about that, because I think that's scar tissue and she may be able to like help you get rid of that for whatever. So I was like, okay, that's good to know. So anyways, it was just like good news again that we got there. Did my first antibiotic intrauterine wash, and they were like, okay, you'll be able to know if they're working once they stop hurting. Like that means they're taking care of the inflammation that's causing a lot of pain for you. First one hurt. That was day 1. Day 2, we did 2. The first one was a little bit uncomfortable. Second or third one, which was the second one on day 2, which was literally 10 minutes or 30 minutes after the first one, like it didn't hurt at all. Literally no pain. Fourth and fifth one, which we did on the third day, no pain at all. So
I played a critical role here, just to interject. Every time she was up there getting these washes, I snuck down, went to the local Euro shop, and brought back 2 up.
I know. I'm like craving that again.
That was one of the better ones we had too. That little like, not hole in the wall, but it was like a specific shop just for that. And they were the cheapest ones too. It was like $8 for 2 in a water. So
yeah, it was insane.
Well, €8, but yeah.
And the waters are huge. Yeah. So it was, that was insane. But yeah, so it was just like really good news. Day 2, we met with Fertilysis again, and that was more of like a content day, all of that. And then day 3, which I'm going to let you share a lot about this. We sat down and talked about reproductive immunology. So we got those results back, and basically of just like what everything looks like and next steps. Mm-hmm. So I think we were both kind of holding our breath for the reproductive immunology.
Yeah, because I think we learned that there's ways to get around it, but it was a scary thought nonetheless that potentially your body could be treating my sperm as like an enemy, or like attacking it like it's a virus. So
that, and also like the embryo itself.
Yeah, exactly, would reject it. So that was definitely worrisome, even though if there's something, it's like you don't want. Well, we almost It would be cool if it's treatable, because then there's something to directly treat. Right. But otherwise,
we've gone down that road so many times where we're like, oh, this is something. Here we go. This is it. And then it's like, nope.
Yeah.
So basically, he went over our reproductive immunology work with us, or results with us, and everything was like perfect. Like it was exactly what he wanted it to be. We were matches for everything.
Yeah, they're looking for essentially that you don't actually share the exact same genetic markers. And I was homogeneous, meaning I had basically 2 of the same ones. I'm going to make up something here, like let's call it G1, right?
It's actually just AA.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. But you get the point. In yours, you had a variety. So if you had matched mine, would have been a problem, but wasn't.
I know. And that was just so exciting to hear. I was like, okay, that's exciting. Like, that's super interesting. Yay. He did mention something about how, like, he thinks, like, recently something's changed in my body. He was like, it looks like your body was fighting. I don't know if it was a sperm or embryo, like, not, I don't know. He was like, I almost don't even want to say this because I feel like people are like, you don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, we're not going to be able to translate that.
But basically it looks like there was a good change recently. I don't think your reproductive immunology changes, but it was like I don't know the science of it all, but like something within it all, he was like, it's changed for the better.
Asterisks
like,
around this one.
Yeah. It's like, this is good. This is good news. So I was like, okay, great. Like, I don't know. Then we did my last antibiotic washes and we were on our way to Santorini. We spent 5 nights in Santorini.
Yeah. Well, so the last day there, I mean, Dr. V broke it down for us in great detail, and it was just really good news that they found. Do you remember what I don't know if I want to call it a pathogen, but the bacteria was they found? Do you remember the name of it? Was it? It might not. I just reread the study the other day, and it was one of those. And essentially, if you can eliminate that, then you're going to allow for the growth of which we talked about earlier. So it was all good news, and they came away. I mean, he was like saying like, I can't make you a promise. However, in the next like 4 to 6 months, I'm very hopeful. So
yeah, that was like so good to hear. I mean, even the doctor that was doing the antibiotic washes, I mean, he was saying the same things to us. Like, he was just like, can't make any promises here. Like, there's no guarantees in your fertility, right? And I ultimately believe that because God has the final say here. But I mean, it's like he was so hopeful too. He was like, everything looks so good. Like, we've done everything you need to do. You've had your surgeries. You're treating your body right. Like, they did really emphasize nutrition, how important that is, exercising properly. Like, I don't know, and stress. They really talked about stress too. So it was just like these things we hear all the time that we're like, is it actually helping? Is this helping me? That was just like a re-emphasis on it, that it's like, these things are really important and are, environmental factors, toxic products, all that kind of stuff, that I was like, it may not be like the thing, but it does add in.
And you kind of have to incorporate as much as you can tolerably, right? As much as like you're able to do, because even in all the studies that I've read, they've identified certain bacteria and they've identified like a correlation to it, but I mean, it just hasn't gotten to the point where they've been like, this is how you get rid of it, or like, this is what causes it, right? So you kind of have to incorporate a lot of things. They say, hey, this has shown here that it can, help with your bodies, blah, blah, blah. You got to use it all, because there's no specific thing. I don't think any doctor can tell you that says, this is the problem, solve it, right?
Right. And that's why I think so many doctors do say, like, let's do IVF, because they just don't know. I mean, that's what they were telling us there too.
But that was, sorry to interject, but that was a good point you brought up. Every test we did and all of getting your microbiome intact, all the studies I read were actually for people doing ART, so assisted reproductive technology. And if you don't have this right, the implementation was super low. It was like in one of them, because it comprised multiple studies. So in one of them, it was basically like 6% were able to do. I always do implantation. Only 6% that didn't have the lactobacilli basically as the predominant bacteria. So it was like, whoa, that's
it's
a
like
low
a huge
rate.
Importance for your microbiome. And I was following 2 girls who were going through IVF, and obviously like we aren't, but like still super interesting to follow them and learn about it all. And they couldn't get pregnant, did testing with Fertilysis. One of them just had their babies. The other one's currently pregnant. And obviously that's not the only thing that helps them get pregnant. There's so much along the way, but like they do give so much credit to Fertilysis for helping their microbiome. So super interesting. Another cool thing with Fertilysis is, they are now partnered with Dr. Vidali. He's like the number 1 endometriosis surgeon here in the US, at least. I don't know if in the world, but like he's very well known. And there's just a huge correlation with endometriosis and your microbiome. So they partnered with him, and he's going to start doing their tests, which that's so cool. Also, the book, It Starts with the Egg, the 3rd edition just came out. And Rebecca, in that book, she talks about how important your microbiome is as well. So it's so interesting. And I think it's just one of those things that's just going to be talked about more and more and more in the fertility realm as it just gets more light and people are willing to learn about it.
I think current clinical studies they're trying to get further, basically, because for something to be in the guidance, in the official guidance, you basically have to have like a ton of research. And some of this stuff is like as recent as 2021 and stuff. So I am hopeful that this becomes more mainline, like in popular culture, because then you're going to see the adoption everywhere, in my opinion. So That's really cool. And didn't we run into a couple? Well, we did in Santorini on the catamaran who they did IVF, correct? Mm-hmm. And they had multiple like implantation failures or multiple issues. So it's like no matter what route you're going through, knowing more and treating the underlying root causes is, in my opinion, going to be beneficial. I mean, you can never know if this is your problem, but like it's great to ferret this out.
Extremely. And that's why, I mean, I'm such an advocate, and I will always stand by this of like, get to the root of what's going on. That was my goal after our miscarriage, figure out why we miscarried. And then I had no idea we'd go through this long of infertility ever since. But like, that's why, you know, I see people say things like, you know, like she just needs to do IVF. Like she's not ovulating. Okay. Loose is one of my issues. One. And I do ovulate. It's just not every single cycle. Right. But it was also so cool to see. You know, we talked to Dr. V there. We talked to this RE there. And they, you know, I straight up asked them, they don't know our thoughts around IVF. Okay. They don't know it's not something that like we won't do. And I straight up asked them, like, do you think our chances will increase if we do IVF? Or do you think that's how we're going to be able to get pregnant? Both of them, unprompted, not in the same, with different locations. I was talking to both of these people. They both said in their own way is no, it's going to just be a lot more expensive chance for you to try and get pregnant. Now you may learn more through it all because you're able to learn about your egg health and like things like that. And like what stage isn't working, right? You're able to learn through that through IVF. But he was like, they both said like, I don't think it's going to increase your odds. And obviously they've worked with tons of patients, especially the RAs. Like, I don't believe it's going to increase your odds at all. I just think it's going to be a much more expensive way for you to try. And I feel like that brought me so much peace because like always in the back of your head, you're wondering like, oh, you know, could we already be pregnant now? Like, is it, especially with everyone chiming in on the internet too of like, you're only going to get pregnant with IVF, blah, blah, blah. It was just like super, super interesting to like sit down and listen to, you know, well-versed doctors in this, like talk about it. So anyways, it was truly the most incredible trip. It brought us, I think, I would say we are the most hopeful and excited we've been in a long time.
For sure.
Absolutely. Long time.
Yeah.
And obviously, like with hope, you're guarded on this journey of trying to conceive. But I don't know. I feel like that guard is just down. And I also just feel like, yeah, it's going to suck if we can't get pregnant these next few months. But I also just feel like a new sense in our journey too, and our purpose and what we're supposed to be doing and where we are in life. And like, it was supposed to work out this way. It's supposed to, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it because I've always hated people being like, everything happens for a reason, or like, you're supposed to be where you are in life. But I felt that on our trip in so many ways. But it was incredible. And I feel like it's just brought us so much excitement.
Yeah. And that was the Fertilysis part.
Yeah.
That was it.
Yeah. And then we went to Santorini, which is incredible. We went to 2 parts of it. So it felt like we were going to the 2 different islands. It was so much fun. Yeah.
Santorini's not known for their beaches, but we've been to a couple of islands on our last time there. And we went to like Syros, Paros, and then we went to Mykonos. And it can be a lot unless you have a really long amount of time to like hop between islands, because you're losing, if you're ferrying, you're losing between 2 hours up to 4 hours. Like you lose time, you got to resettle in. Yeah. So we decided to do one island. And even though Santorini...
So glad we did, because I was so sick of like cars and
movement,
planes and movement, like packing, all that stuff. I was like, oh, I just want to like sit.
Yeah. So if you're just looking for vacation advice, I would recommend some of the other islands we went to, like Paros and Syros. I wouldn't recommend Mykonos, actually.
Yeah, me neither. I mean, unless you're like a big partier.
I guess, but yeah, it just wasn't my cup of tea for a lot of reasons.
If I was single and younger, like Mykonos would be where it's at, but
yeah, if you want to go blow money and party.
Yeah, it is really expensive too.
But
I didn't find Santorini being that expensive.
So we stayed 3 nights, in Perivalo/Parisa Beach. So that's on the eastern side of the island, and it's black sand beaches. That part especially is super affordable because it's like a 2.5 mile strip of basically different restaurants with cabanas and stuff.
I will eat pasta every day. It was glorious.
Yeah. So there were like expensive ones if you wanted to, but there was just so much, like you could choose between 30 different places with whatever budget you want to go for the day. And that was perfect for me.
And then the other part is Ia, which is what you think of like Mamma Mia, right? The cliffs.
Yeah.
That was definitely a little bit more expensive. But I mean, even then, I feel like you can find the little spots.
You can find them. However, there's way more spots that are on the upper scale for sure. But Ia it's gorgeous. It is like those cave houses just built in. The views you can't beat. And if you stay there, like you really can't just walk around to go anywhere. It's so fun. However, I think both you and I know I thought this. Ia was really crowded on some days. It was like one day it wasn't.
Yeah, because the cruise ships came in.
Yeah, so cruise ships will come into that port, and it's just like once it comes to 12 o'clock
and the
noon,
streets are small.
Yeah, so you're fishing through it, like you're just in a line. I didn't love that part, but
but it really was such an incredible trip. But I want to wrap us up really quick because oh my gosh, we're at 45 minutes. I want to wrap us up really quick and just talk about like if you are interested with testing with Fertilysis. So obviously, I'm not here to sell you on it at all. I always find it super interesting to listen to other people's stories, listen to their experiences, and take what you want from it and apply it in your own life. But Fertilysis does do testing from afar all over the world. So anywhere you are, they do testing. And you can choose which testing you want to do. So I did the microbiome full testing. Stephen did DNA fragmentation testing. And then we also did reproductive immunology. So these are all tests they offer. If you're trying to figure out which testing to do, again, go over to the highlight on my Instagram. And the Q&A kind of answers this. So hopefully that can give you some peace of mind. You can always reach out to me as well. And they also do have something called Trip and Treat where you can go basically do what we did. It's 7 nights in Athens. You could obviously tack on whatever else islands if you want. But they do like a boat trip to 2 different islands one day, or maybe 3 different islands one day. You know, you do all the sightseeing, all of that. And they have everything taken care of, your drivers, all of that. Hotel, 5-star hotel we stayed at was great. It was a Radisson Blue. Like it was super nice. And you know, that you do your testing with Fertilysis. And that's something that if you're thinking about doing, I want to urge you to first do testing from afar first. So that way they can know what's going on and like obviously try treatment from afar too, because maybe it is just simple antibiotics you can get and you're good and your body's not as complicated as mine. But you know, like I really would, and like they would urge you to do the same. In fact, they told us that. They were like, don't just tell people to come here. Like try the testing from afar. It's cheaper. It's going to give way more information. There's a possibility to be able to like figure out what's going on and do the treatment from afar, all of that. So
the Trip or Treat's secondary for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just if you want everything taken care of and you really want to go, it's there for that. But like, it's not the main thing they do, and like, it's not what they're all about.
And if you are interested in the Trip and Treat or whatever, like anything, go to their website. They're on their website. I think it's under services that'll talk you more about Trip and Treat. But I feel like Fertilysis is like family to us now. It's really hard to find anyone and a professional on this journey who truly cares for you and your future and like makes such a big impact on you, right? And like these people have made such a huge impact on us, whether it's what helps us get pregnant, because I don't think it's going to be there's been so many things that's been going on with me. Like I will never say Fertilysis is what got us pregnant. It's going to be a piece of the puzzle, right? Like nothing I'm doing is going to be the thing that gets us pregnant.
And we're going to take this back to our gynecologist here.
NAPRO doctor here.
NAPRO doctor, and then go over all this and try and implement it and see what's useful and go from there.
Yeah, so I actually have an appointment with her next Wednesday where we're going to just go over it all. I mean, she's super open-minded, very interested in this stuff too.
Yeah.
So going to go over it all with her, kind of figure out next steps for us, but we're hopeful and we're excited, and like everyone's being like, you just like seem so happy now. Like there's a new sense of like excitement on social media, like your presence gives now. I'm like, I just feel it.
You're just glowing.
I am.
And then last thing, we've already linked it, but also we'll put the studies in the YouTube or podcast link so that if you just want to say, hey, what's like the background behind this? I think those are super interesting. So
definitely. Yeah. Thanks for being here with us. I know this was a longer episode, so thanks for
I'll try and
listening to it all.
Bookmark it on YouTube so you can skim through the sections you want. But yeah.
All right. We'll see you next time.